Hi, and welcome to the Psychology Podcast. My name is Alex Archetti, and today we are joined by my friend and co-host Jonathan Urbanek, a student here at UMass Dartmouth. Today we will be talking about the psychological impacts of virtual education and mental health in our society. Well, first of all, how are you doing today, Jonathan?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. So, as we said, the topic today is going to be about psychology and just the general, young generation and how we're dealing with education here. And the first topic I want to talk about is virtual education itself and the actual complications and how it works. So the biggest problem that I have with virtual education is just and that it's virtual in itself. So we have a regular classroom in which someone has a social community where someone goes to a place like a school or building or a center, and they spend time and they have to actually learn a subject with other peers and study and be in a classroom environment. And the biggest problem that I have with that is in a virtual setting that's entirely taken away. It's just you in whatever room you decide to set up, and it's totally online. There's no connectivity, there's no atmosphere, and that's the problem I have with it.
Absolutely. My first year at school, I found it very beneficial to be in these study groups that I found through class, through sitting next to people, through asking questions in class in person. And it's a lot harder to actually get into a conversation or strike a conversation with a peer or even a professor. You can't. It's hard to stay after and talk to them and ask questions. So in that aspect, it is very challenging. I think that being isolated in itself is already a struggle, and when you add learning to that, it's gonna make it even harder. So
Oh,
what I oh go ahead, sorry.
oh no, no. I was just gonna say that I totally agree in that already isolation itself is a very complicated and heavy toll for someone to take, and then add on virtual education, it's even harder, right?
Absolutely. I think that the fact that it's always there. Like there's always a due date and there's always a time you can do it. With synchronous and asynchronous learning, I think that even though the classes are it could be, in person or sorry, live with class like with cameras on, or it could be
Mm-hmm.
learn at your own pace. Either way, I think that having the loomy cloud of just having these assignments due and when you're going to do them, you never get a mental break. I felt like my best mental break in my first year of college was being able to relax on the weekends, go out, have fun with my friends, like go out and do stuff and have that social connection. And I know that uh, it's kind of off to education. However, I think that the social aspect always gives us a break. Think about middle school, high time. Everything really came together, and the social aspect was a huge part of learning that we took for granted. So I wanted to bring up an interesting point that I really think is true and will hold true. I think that as technology is implemented more and more throughout education, the integrity of education itself will continue to decrease. And this is because the use of online resources, the use of online study programs, and also the fact that attention spans are always broken due to technology, cellular device use during class can't be monitored in an online class. Everything
Oh,
essentially
yeah.
is out the window. It's you're on your own. You got to take the responsibility and time to take your education seriously. Otherwise, you know, I think the core principles of education and enforcing rules are going to decrease.
Oh, entirely. I mean, if you literally technology and virtual education, it doesn't create a system of proper reinforcement and motivation for someone to follow and complete anything in the class. I mean, there's almost a sense of unlimited distractions
Right.
in someone's life already, and a lot of
Oh
the
yeah.
reason why people could stay so focused in schooling is you had a separate place that took you away from all that. You had a place that was dedicated to pure education, but
I mean,
now
heck, I
it's
mean,
crazy.
have you've obviously experienced it in numerous calls where I get interrupted by either my siblings or parents or whatever it may
Oh,
be. There's just
definitely.
so many factors at home that play into part of taking away from the true structure of education that I'm used to.
and it makes it much more complicated when each teacher is learning at their own pace of how to do this education, and they're applying different principles or different guidelines with different programs. It can get very complicated trying to follow the strings of assignments with different like criteria, and what I have to go through now. I go through Blackboard and then Zoom and then Chem 101 and Math Lab and get it all lined up. It gets very frustrating to try to keep it all together. And when it
Right.
comes to like the issues that we can have,
Yep.
trying to learn in the class itself is even more difficult.
hmm Yep. Absolutely. I had to deal with multiple programs, multiple websites myself this semester, and keeping up with that was really it was a huge strain on myself. I was always constantly checking 5 different
Oh
platforms.
yeah, it's constant anxiety over all the work that I need to do that I don't feel like that I'm doing it like that I'm doing productively enough. I'm worried that I'm not learning the material. I'm worried that I'm not going to do well in the class, or that my GPA will be negatively affected. It's a lot of anxiety that is coming out of this education that I think could be foregone if it was just in person.
You're right. And aside from the programs or the math labs I used that would give me my percentages back right away, or what I got on the exams or homeworks, some of the things were graded themselves by teachers, and they didn't really have deadlines. So I found in some of the classes I was really confused about where I stood in the class, and I feel like I would have had a better sense if I was actually attending in-person classes where I could keep up with the work and know that I'm understanding it. Because you know when you're not going to understand something in a class, and you know when you're going to
Oh
have to
yeah,
spend more time. You're like, all right, I'm gonna have to go home and study for a bit and ask questions after class, maybe join an extra help session or a review session, and maybe then I'll be caught up. But no, I felt with virtual learning, if I was falling behind, I almost felt resourceless. Even though there were resources, I just found myself not used to them and not willing to try. And I don't know if that was in part of fact of being isolated from everyone else in the social aspect and how that played a toll on it, but I certainly found myself a lot harder for me to reach out and ask people questions. So I felt that they
that
were already
that that I can entirely agree with.
I felt that everyone was already overwhelmed with having to learn, like teachers themselves having to learn how to teach this, and I feel like everyone was already overwhelmed. I know we're all in the same boat, but I myself just always feel I don't want to put that pressure on someone, but the pressure comes from all this
Hmm.
learning online, and
And I
really
feel like
it's
trying. Even more so, I feel like trying to get extra help from a teacher, it's much more difficult when it's just virtually. I mean, I've attended after hours with teachers before, and it's hard for them to try to explain like the problems that I'm having. I can't like sit there and they can't show me like in person and give me direct comparisons and try to teach. It's more of just like a here, I can share your screen and I can tell you more about. I can just list off like the issues that you're having, but I can't have someone directly there to connect with me and help me solve my problems. It's not. It doesn't work the same. It's not the same. It's not an equal substitute at all.
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I know you have a little sister, and does she have to do any school virtually? How does that work for her?
No, so currently they're attending classes in person. They live in New Hampshire, so I know that the restrictions there are a lot less. I'd have to say I'm not entirely sure on that, but I know that in-person learning is certainly something that they've at least I would say I wouldn't say valued, but it's not that other states don't value it. It's just that they take the precautions due to COVID. Um,
Hmm.
I feel that there has been less restrictions on COVID there. I know the mask mandate just rolled out, but the value of in-person learning is really there, and um, I know that they learn all in person as opposed to either hybrid or only online.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, another problem that this might just be me citing, and I don't want to mean to just cite anecdotal evidence here or sound like I'm just pulling from a certain population, but from almost every single person that I've asked about virtual education within my own college and other people who are in the general, same like difficulty field of education, they have uh, identical problems when it comes to this. They have struggles with motivation, with the distractions, with like a sense of security or a sense of success and fulfillment. They don't feel like they're learning anything, and a lot of it just comes down to just like half-assed work. It's how a lot of people are feeling, and I don't see, like, I don't think that this problem is something that is just is just like a small. It's just a small issue within a small subset population. It's a
Right.
broader spectrum. I think it's affecting the whole country on a different level.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I
And
mean, there
I,
are.
oh,
You can go.
sorry.
Sorry.
See, this is
No,
another
you.
part of the virtual the virtual experience, unfortunately. But
Entirely.
I wanted to bring up the major factor of screen time. We already know how screen time affects the
Oh
brain,
yeah.
affects your eyes, and strains your eyes out. So to add another 6 hours of learning a day that you're staring at a screen rather than being outside, um,
Doing anything else, I could be even
what's the
productive.
effect of that?
I
We
think
really don't
that's
know.
severely detrimental. I mean, if you're taking away the humanity, I mean, this it's just like telling someone to watch a YouTube series on astrophysics and then expecting them to know the material. I mean, they're only gonna know as much as they're willing to learn, and
Yeah,
I feel like they're willing to learn. That level of it is so much decreased because of what's currently happening with this virtual. And yeah, I mean, literally, you can develop so many, like, you can develop eye problems. Hell, I mean, after the first like 2 weeks of school, my back was hurting just from sitting in this chair for so long, trying to soak in all the material. It's like,
yeah.
it's almost agonizing. I mean, and then let's think about, like, take like a kindergarten or like a first or second grader. Like, how are they supposed to sit in front of a screen for 6 hours at all?
Right. Unfortunately, we have to deal with this due to COVID.
Yeah, well,
Tough times require tough measures and tough decisions, and unfortunately, it's for the better of the good. As a quote from the
yeah.
TV show. But
That I can agree with, and I mean, I understand that right now, like, this is the best we're gonna have, and this is the best we can do. But I do not feel like there being equal. There's not any equal relief factors that are trying to subside the consequences of this virtual education. I don't think it's
yeah,
fair to the students or anyone at all who's trying to get a decent education to have to learn everything majority online. I don't think that's fair.
well,
Okay.
we're certain that can't continue forever, but it'll be done with once we a vaccine is implemented and herd immunity is reached. So
That is true.
I do not see us using virtual learning for the next you know after the next year or two. We're not probably not going back to it unless something like this happens again.
Yeah, no, that I agree with. I mean, the only thing I feel bad with is there is the kids aren't gonna have any snow days anymore. They're just gonna have to. They'll just get on and just have to get on their Zoom meeting laptops and do with their teachers. It's gonna be very, very, very interesting. So, let's say, okay. So another topic here, which I thought was very important, was not, this isn't virtual education necessarily, but it's still a piece of technology and it's affecting our generation in vast ways. So that is social media. So Jonathan, what do you think of social media? Like, what do you think about it?
Well, you know, from a young age, we've been taught that posting on social media is though it's a gratifying thing. You're gonna post something, you're gonna get some likes, you're gonna base your self-worth off of your amount of likes, amount of comments, amount of user interaction, and a lot of people use it as a social hierarchy, like a basis of social hierarchy to base themselves connecting with their classmates. And
Mm-hmm.
I found that happening even as early as middle school. Um,
Me too.
so as we started to build up longer and longer, I can only imagine the pressures of younger kids now who are getting exposed to it at an even earlier age. Um, I think there's a certain point in time where you can make your own choices and decisions on these things, but at a young age when your brain's quite underdeveloped and
You don't know any
frankly
better, right?
frankly our brains are still underdeveloped. We're not even 25, which is the average age that the brain is fully developed.
Mm-hmm.
So really we have no clue how it's affecting us when compared to older generations. But if you take a look at the studies from what is it, like anywhere from between the 60s and the 90s, you look at the pre-tech era where people weren't using social media and weren't using that to fit in, you can certainly see that the happiness levels, at least in self-worth and not comparing yourself to others, was a lot less. You only compared yourself to people in magazines and TV shows,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people knew that like there were unrealistic standards, but when you start to see that these anomalies weren't as uncommon as you think, when you start seeing them pop up in your feed every 5 minutes, you start seeing you know, some guy is ripped with a six pack and the best gene insertion ever, and you think that that's achievable, and then you see all these other things, and you think everything's all you have to be keeping up with these people. It's a terrible feedback loop that you're gonna continue to follow, and that
Entirely.
that social media, the I don't know, it just really gets me ticked off sometimes.
No, that I can agree with. I think in its entirety, the general comparison of yourself to another is unnecessary and unhealthy for the individual itself. I mean, we're
Right.
each complex with our own talents and our own cons and things we have to struggle with. But I think comparing ourselves directly to another person is just going to lead to a path of either uh, just looking for superiority if you just think you're better than everyone else online because you can make the best photo, or just feeling a sense of just not being enough, or not being pretty enough, or not cool enough, or not rich enough, or not handsome enough. It doesn't breed a
Yep.
healthy kind of culture that I think is very hurtful.
Exactly. I
And
learned in one of my classes. I just bring that up because you were talking about this exact point. Teacher brought up the never enough syndrome in his book, Fred and Me, but Dr. Gerber. Great book, and he uh, he talked about a philosophy where people would believe that they never had enough. Never enough. It was always, oh, like, yeah, I'm not gonna be happy until I buy this boat, and then like, you end up buying a $40 million yacht. Well, what's next? Like never satisfied with what you have. That's why you have to take a step back, especially in these times. You have to take a step back and you have to really understand what you're and what's given you the passion and drive in the last however many years of your life to get to the point where you're at now. And self development is key, but being happy with your present self is even more important.
that I can entirely agree with, Jonathan. Now, another issue that I also have when it comes to social media is a lot of it is very unanimous or has a lot of anonymity behind it, so it can breed a lot of hatred when people aren't met with consequences, or you have a lot of situations which can be taken out of context. People can spread hatred and cruelty to others without fear of any consequence, and then when someone is seeing that information, they have no idea where it's coming from, if that person is emotionally charged, or if there are other influences directing their hatred towards that person. It's a lot of that fades, and you just see a negative comment about you or yourself or about someone else, which can be very downsetting. And that's why I think it's very important to have a tolerance and a responsible approach when it comes to social media, to understand the positives and negatives that can bring and have a healthy balance. I don't think
Right.
relying on your happiness for social media as much as what a lot of people do now, especially younger people do, is very healthy. And we need to definitely have a talk about, just as a society, as a better way of dealing with this powerful tool that we have. We have instant communication and connection, but it's not always taken for good.
Yep.
I mean,
Very, very
another
true. It's not always taken for good.
No, it's definitely not. And on the topic of tribalism, it's easy for someone to social media to conflict and to talk with other people about certain beliefs that they have, and then it gets hard for them to see conflicting opinions, or to truly, like, have a broader perspective to form a justifiable, like, a reason. It's people can be blind to certain amounts of information, and they can find others with them who agree with that, and you can create this environment where people just stick within groups and just get mad and scream at each other over the internet, and nothing ever gets accomplished that way.
Hmm.
That's a problem that I have with it.
Right.
Let's see. Oh, and another the biggest problem that I have with the younger generation, who are especially coming on now with using social media and media in general, or any like kind of technology as much as they are now, is the addiction. Like it can be very addictive to see all these likes on your Instagram and everyone calling you this or that, and yeah, like that's a good thing to have, positive reinforcement by your peers. It comes to a point where you're no longer doing it, like you're no longer doing it
You're
just
not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the ego.
mhm.
To
Yeah, okay,
feed
see
the
that, yeah,
ego.
that's exactly what's happening. And that's where it becomes very complicated. Like, how do we control that, or how do we restrict sort of thing from happening.
Yeah.
Okay, so for our third topic, we are going to be talking about technology itself and how its development of technology in the last recent years has been positive, but there are consequences when it comes to it. There are definitely drawbacks we need to know. I think the most important thing we need to have with technology is responsibility over it. We've traded in a lot of privacy and security in our lives for just conveniency, and when it comes to that, I think there's a lot of issues that people just do not see it. Like when it comes to companies or certain people, or I wouldn't say the government, not tinfoil hat theory, but it's people having control over your information and your privacy, and just they can dictate and influence the things that you see and what information you can gain. I don't think it's healthy to be able to have a biased opinion that you're not even aware of because you're not open to all the information accessible to you.
Yeah.
It can be like this
Yeah,
technology comes with a
you
lot of
never know what's
power.
out there. Every single time you fill out something, and it stays on the internet forever. We've been taught that ever since a young age, but it's ever so more true in this generation or this day and age. Anything you post, something you could have posted 10 years ago when it could have been socially acceptable, could now
Hmm.
be extremely offensive. And
Yeah.
while I could agree with some of the things that are offensive, at the time of the posting, those weren't viewed as so offensive. So,
Hmm.
um, while people can develop and forget things that happened in the past, if you didn't post something, let's say it would take a controversial topic such as I'm not sure. Let's just say something was very offensive or wasn't a very offensive 10 years ago. Someone posted a picture, had no idea what was coming, and then 10 years later receives extreme backlash for it. Well, how do you go about socially punishing that person? Is the next
Hmm.
question. Um,
It's like, haha, I got you. You're racist, or you're misogynistic, or you're whatever it was. 10 years ago that wasn't accepted. But like, what can be like? What? Okay, what now? Like, okay, yeah, I mean, that shouldn't have been said. And it's. I guess it's
Absolutely,
forcing
and
an apology out of person.
yeah, right. Forcing an apology, but um, many people were guilty of doing the same exact things at the same time period, and it's where the line has to be drawn with using past things and technology that are in a database, right? If you take data
Hmm.
from 10 years ago, it's not always going to be true of what holds today. Same goes for things that are posted or things that are said. It's just something that could have been said 10 years ago that is not posted on social media will likely be forgotten. Someone's not going to just recall that, like, oh, this person did this or did that, or get really mad at them because of that. But if something still lies there on the internet or social media or whatever, it's gonna come back. It'll come back to you, and that's another scary part about social media and technology is that whatever you post can always come back to hurt you.
Oh yeah, I mean, did you ever see that there was those two girls who made a video about something that was provocative, as in it wasn't socially accepted, and they were both immediately dismissed from both of their colleges, and they
Yeah,
were like almost blacklisted by universities. It's like that is crazy. That was one thing you can do online can like just destroy your entire future or what you hope to do and label you. It's
correct. Well, that's why you have
it's a
to take
very
the
scary
precautions, and you
environment.
also have to think about what you post. It's very dumb to not dumb. I would say very. You got to calculate the risk that you're going to take, and personally, I just don't like to post things like that on media because of that. However,
Hmm.
nor would I ever hold an opinion so extremely offensive like that. It's just it's
Well,
very difficult.
what I think is that even if these opinions, or if someone's opinion isn't entirely agreed with, it still is a topic of discussion and shouldn't be just blatantly disregarded or dismissed. I think people should be more understood for the reasons behind what they do. I think the reasons behind of which someone posts something or says something, it should be explored, and we shouldn't immediately dismiss someone for just something that is deemed controversial or not entirely perfect.
Right.
And another thing that I want to talk about, not social media of technology, but technology and the amount of expedientry that we've gained from it. as in it's very, very easy to get distracted, way more than it was, I feel like in the past when it comes to, the amount of information. Like sometimes, like it's so easy to click YouTube and get lost for hours, or just go into
Yeah.
Google and look up an article and article after article after article. You don't even realize what the time's gone. I mean, the average person wastes like over like half an hour on the internet every single day. It's like it's crazy. Yeah,
Yep.
doesn't doesn't make a lot of sense. And
Absolutely,
now,
dude. A big thing I implemented in my daily ritual is just checking my screen time before I go to bed. Really, I like to see how much time I wasted on my phone each day. Not to say that
hmm
all of it's wasted, because some of it's used for productivity, such as school or checking Robinhood or other investment portfolios. And there's things that I have to do virtually, but there's also things that have to be done in real life. And I think that setting aside time to, you know, go out and ride my bike, even how cold it is, I don't care. I still want to get a few miles in and
hmm hmm
stay active and get some sunlight and get some outdoor time. And it's very important to live your life outside of technology.
Yeah, that kind of responsibility and having that control over technology in your life is very important. And I myself, I struggle with that. It comes to a point of like where you can, I could spend myself wasting time, like crucial time that I could spend on actually learning something or reading or going to the gym, just being wasted just by just by going over and looking at something that, like, is totally like non-important to what I need to be doing. I don't need to learn, how many feet there are in the birds in the Galapagos Islands and how that affects their overall fertility rate. That isn't important to me, but at the time, I think it is, which is very crazy.
Right, correct.
Okay, so another topic that I thought was very important was a lot of misconceptions we have about mental health. Well, at least when it comes to how we're
Right.
trying to cope with it. And then, well, I do think there are very good, there are a lot of, proper ways that people go about dealing and, coping with mental health issues such as anxiety, OCD, PTSD. But a lot of it has been not effective, as in we're trying to use technology, like, as in, the advancements we've made in a lot of medicine to just apply general solutions and try to fix chemical imbalances in a person, like to just classify a disorder as just something like, as a chemical that someone needs to fix, or a number that needs to be changed. And it comes to like, if people are just being fed all these medications that aren't doing anything for them, if anything, it's counterproductive.
Right. Well, without the structure needed, there's no point of temporary chemical imbalance that will be changed and will be just so someone will get used to that chemical imbalance. But if they don't change the structure inside their life, uh, as soon as they stop taking the medication, they're just going to go back down to those uh,
hmm
levels that were previously experienced. So,
and I mean, these people on these medications require more and more tolerances. The tolerance grows, and they require more and more of each medication to even get the same effect and the same sense of of numbness. I would like to say, which is
right,
not there at
correct.
all. So finally, here, what I wanted to talk about is just the general health. I would say health crisis that we're having to deal with currently, in our nation. Maybe it could be a little more than that, but I know that at least in the United States, it's not well. I mean, it's a statistical fact that only 45% of our generation reports being consistently happy and motivated within their lives. Like, why do you think that is so?
As we talked about, the everlasting factor of social media is always over us. Lack of social interaction that's come from whatever we've done is just we lack all the social skills, or sorry, the social interaction necessary for basically the fulfillment, or the typical fulfillment we'd get from our lives and we've been used to. And we've never had any guidelines or structure towards, yeah, you know, we we've never experienced a sort like a set structure of, if you're on your own, you have to do this, or if you're
hmm
on your own, you're gonna be doing this and that, and you're gonna wake up at this time. And it's like, no, if you were going to school in person, everyone's waking up from the times of 5 to 7 a.m. If you're going to school at 7:15, Everyone's waking up
Mm-hmm.
at that time. Everyone's going to bed around the same time. Everyone's doing the same activities. Everyone's taking the same sports. Same thing goes for college. All my friends were, we'd have a basketball league. We'd all get dinner together. We'd all go to bed at the same time. We'd all do the same activities together. And now it's like, well, I'm sitting in my room. I could go to bed at 8 p.m. Someone else can go to bed at 8 a.m. Like there's two
Yeah.
complete opposite sides, and the whole crisis of the pandemic causing isolation is just it's a really big factor in
Oh,
changing up
it's
it's changing up
detrimental.
the normal lifestyle that we're used to.
That
But
I agree with. I mean, I just came out of a 14-day isolation quarantine, and as I was exposed to someone who had COVID-19, and just the 14 days. I mean, you don't think about it when you're just writing off the bill, right? And I know it's necessary to keep people safe, but like
right,
14 days of I was just here alone in my own little suite, and it's just it's a little numbing. Like it's not. It's not like sad. I mean, you could say it's sad in a sense, but it's not like that I'm like depressed or that I'm had to be here. But it's very dull and it's very boring and it feels wrong. It's just like I'm in my own little pocket of a world, and you don't feel like you're any connected or have any of that social communication that we so desire as a species.
right.
Okay, here. So let us see. Okay, and now another thing that I have with technology is people having a lack of responsibility when it comes to it. Like you have
Mhm.
people who want to use it for power, as in to influence others and to control others, and it just we have a lot of technologies, and especially at the internet and a lot of things that we developed in the last 10, 15 years. I don't think they've been regulated enough to have like to be primed to be the most successful and responsible outcomes that we're looking for here.
Right, right.
Okay. And let us see. So to finally, who is to blame for this mental health crisis? Well, I don't think it's a who, but certainly COVID-19 and the general isolations and problems that we're having now are not positive, and it's been the current setup we have to deal with here. It's very difficult with someone and their mental health. And then we have technology and social media, which irresponsibility can lead to mental health issues. It's a lack of
Yes, from the
importance.
virus, unfortunately, you have to be there from a standpoint, but to work against or finding the proper solution to making these consequences minimal is extremely, extremely important. And
Mhm.
I think that when people are not allowed to express their opinions, we can take someone's opinion who is completely false, falsifying facts and information. We can still take things from what they say. So I don't think it's there's one right answer and there's one wrong answer. It's always typically somewhere in between. All
There's a
right.
middle ground with
There's
everything.
always
It's
there
not.
there's always a middle ground.
Mhm.
There's always facts that will be true and or sorry, opinions that will be at least somewhat factually based and opinions that will be, you know, just mere casual opinions. And you really have to find a common middle ground to find a solution, in my opinion.
I agree that a lot of disinformation has become a very crucial problem within our current society as people who are being unconsciously influenced on their own opinions by seeing information or seeing search results or just general articles or media that isn't directly pointing that isn't truly unbiased and offer a general scope of knowledge where someone can assess and make their own opinions. I feel like a lot of people's opinions are just being like foreset.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's an issue I have with it. And I think that wraps it up here today at the podcast. Well, I'd like to thank you for joining me, Jonathan. And is there anything you'd like to say before we end it here?
Yeah, I would just like to give a quick shout out to all the people who listen to this and take the time to listen to other people's opinions. Um, I know that everyone's going through difficult times, and you know whether it's dealing with a situation at home or you know just being another person, a part of the statistic of being a virtual learner or educator. There's a lot of pure difficulty in this process, and I find it I find that if we all work towards finding an end to this, and once we get there, it'll be so fulfilling, and I think that we will all never take for granted again the pure means of social interaction and its true effects on our education. And I can't wait until that time, but for now, we must continue to do what science tells us, and hopefully find a cure that will be implemented safely and effectively. I know we're on the correct or the right track, but optimally, we should be by the middle of next year. Hopefully, we should be reach herd immunity and be at that point where we can resume to our normal education.
I cannot agree with you more, Jonathan. And we will leave it at that. Thank you for joining with our podcast today.